Hey, stepmamas, welcome to the Stepmom Unfiltered podcast. This is your go to space for unapologetic, unfiltered conversations about the roller coaster ride of stepmotherhood. We're your hosts. I'm Adrienne.
And I'm Amelia. We understand that being a stepmom is like walking a tightrope in stilettos. So we're here to help you embrace the messiness, laugh through the craziness, and find strength in our shared experiences.
This podcast is more than just a series of episodes, it's a community for stepmoms to be real, raw, and unfiltered. Buckle up because we're about to embark on a journey of candid conversations, taboo topics, and expert insights.
This is the Stepmom Unfiltered podcast, your sanctuary for real talk and real solutions.
Happy Thursday, and welcome back to the next episode of the Stepmom Unfiltered podcast. How are you, Amelia?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm good. Good. Ready for today's conversation, which is one that we get asked often. I mean, it comes up in every forum that you see for step parents.
Mm-hmm.
Clients ask us all the time. You see questions on social media. And that's
It
what's
definitely ruffles feathers.
it can. It can. And
It
I
can.
always feel like, why? It doesn't need to. It can be so much simpler than
Simpler.
that.
Yeah.
So what's in a name? What do your stepchildren call you? How was that decision made? Was it by default or was there a conversation? And then how do you navigate blended family life with different last names in the family? Um,
Mm-hmm.
you probably don't get the cute little signs that say like, oh, we're the Lane family or we're the Barton family or we're the X family. Um,
Yeah.
because of the challenges and not wanting to have hurt feelings. So
Yeah.
let's dive in. Let's start with what do your stepchildren call you?
Okay, yeah, there's so many things to unpack here. For me, my stepdaughter calls me by my nickname, which is Mimi. That was given to me when when my youngest sister was really, really young, because she couldn't say my name. And it just kind of stuck through the years to the point where there were people that didn't actually know my name. Like that's how they
Oh,
knew me.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, like all of her friends knew me as that. Um,
So was that an intentional conversation that you had within your family or did it just happen by default?
I literally think it just like it happened because the girls, like my sisters, would always call me that, and then other family members started calling me that, and then it just kind of stuck.
I
And
love that.
so I guess I should, add before I was a stepmom in this relationship, I was also a stepmom in my prior relationship when I was engaged, and those children also called me Mimi. That's what I was
Okay.
always called by them as well. But with my current stepdaughter, I don't recall it being a conversation that, this is what you should call me. It, it somehow happened. I don't remember how. Um, but yeah, she still uses it if she's
Here and there.
like, if we're in the house and she's referring to me, she'll say Mimi. Um, but yeah,
Does she refer to you that way all the time or just sometimes?
yeah, no, I guess, yeah, no, she refers to me that way all the time.
I love
But
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just how it worked out. Yeah.
Well, and that is, I mean, that is one of the recommendations you hear out there, right? Is like come up with a nickname so
A
that
fun name. Yeah.
yeah, so then there's no concern, there's no hurt feelings. It can be fun and cute and something that creates, starts to help create some of that bond in the relationship as well. So, I love that.
It's funny because growing up, I have a stepdad, and I always called him by his first name. Um, just because I did. I had
Yeah.
my dad, and so I called him by his first name. But as that side of the family grew and I had sisters and everything, I do remember finding myself like I wanted to call him dad when I was there. Um, because he is like my dad. I mean,
Right.
he is. He's my second dad. I love him to pieces. Um, but I never did because I don't know. It felt like I didn't feel like I could switch it because it had been so many years in. So I just always called him by his first name. But since having children, they've always called him Papa. So now I call him Papa. So he's just referred to as Papa, which I kind of love because now I get to kind of have that name to give him, which I think he deserves.
That's fun.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you think that when you were growing up and you wanted to call your stepdad dad, do you think there was some part of you that didn't want to disrespect your dad, or did you have any influence from your dad that made you feel that way?
My dad, no, not from my dad at all.
That's
My
good.
parents did a great job at not putting their adult issues onto me.
That's
I
awesome.
think I've spoken about it before. They've done a lot of things not great. But one thing they did was never make me feel put in the middle of their issues, which I appreciate so much now, especially as an adult and going through all of this and seeing how easy it is to sometimes, maybe put those things on our kids. They did a really great job at not doing that to me. But I think it was just my own feelings of loyalty to my dad, and not wanting to be disloyal, which yeah is interesting because we have talked about recently, loyalty binds. Children can feel loyalty binds without there being conflict, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I guess, I'm kind of an example of that. How,
It's a
yeah,
really good, yeah, it's a
no one
really good
ever made me
point.
feel that way. Yeah,
I feel like
yeah,
when loyalty binds always comes up, there's such a negative connotation with it. It's always like there's got to be a problem or like somebody's done something wrong. And I think
right,
you're right. There are times it can exist without anybody doing anything wrong. It's just the loyalty a child feels to a biological parent.
right.
And it can be something that only that child feels, and the parents don't even realize it's happening or that they feel a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever even had this conversation with any of them. And I mean, I'm what, 41 years old now. So surprise if you're listening.
Yeah. A truly real, raw, and unfiltered
It,
conversations. You can tell
yeah,
we
it
don't
truly
plan
is.
this.
No,
Love
no, we
that.
don't. So yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Good.
anyway, yeah.
That's neat. Well, and so we've talked about nicknames. We've talked about just calling step parents by their first name. That's also really, really common. Um,
Hmm.
and then there's a whole bunch of other scenarios that I hear people go with. Um, I know for us, our kids actually came to us when we had shared that we were getting married, and they were like, "So what are we supposed to call you?" And my husband and I looked at each other and we're like, pause for a moment. We're gonna get back to you. Give us 5 minutes to go have a
Yeah.
conversation." Because neither of us knew, like, we were so taken back. I mean, the truth is we hadn't thought that through. We hadn't really
Yeah.
thought any of that through or had all of those conversations. And then here our young children were asking us, "So what does that mean? What do we call each of you? What does that make us?" Um, and
Hmm.
so we talked it through and we just decided that the kids would get to decide.
Yeah.
So we sat them all down together and we explained to them that they can call us whatever they're comfortable calling us as long as it's respectful and as long as
Mhm.
it doesn't change when they're in trouble or angry or upset. Those were our two
Yeah.
ground rules. It was just
Yeah.
really simple.
Yeah.
They couldn't flip flop because they were mad and not getting what they wanted and they were going to use it to guilt trip or something of that nature. So,
Hmm.
um, but beside that, they got to pick what they called each of us. And ironically, all of our girls picked differently. So my two stepdaughters called me mom, but my two daughters call my husband by his first name. Um, and interestingly, now that they've gotten older, they've given him a nickname. And for those of you that don't know, my husband is the one that edits our podcast. So he's going to be listening to this laughing. But they have nicknamed him Tony. The one name he absolutely despises.
Nice.
And I'll tell you what, though, he's embraced it because he
Aw.
realized that it's their way of connecting with him and it's
Yeah.
something between them.
Hmm.
And so it's become this little internal and, inside family joke that they get a kick out of. And so there's kind of that bond building piece going on that's really nice to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah,
So,
that is actually.
yeah. But as you can imagine, having stepchildren call you mom is not always favorable with the exes. And so it did create things that we had to navigate that aren't fun. But at the end of the day, when it came down to it, we just always explained, look, this isn't a respect thing. There's nobody
Right.
replacing anybody. That's not possible. And that's not the intent either. But in
Right.
our home, we did operate in a way that we were mom and dad. Those are the roles that we filled and the roles that we played. And that's what the kids were comfortable with. And who are we to tell them, no, you're not going to do that when that's what they say they're most comfortable with? Um, so, and
Yeah.
it, yeah, go ahead.
I think what happens is just that. I think, feelings can kind of get in the way, and bio mom can start thinking, well, she's really trying to take over, now the kids are calling her mom. And it's like, when you step back and take all the conflict and everything out of it, like the kids just want to feel like they're at home no matter where they are, right? Like it's
Yep.
very difficult living in 2 different homes with 2 different rules. And like if you can have something just as simple as like, these are my parents, this is mom and dad, and that's mom and dad, right? Like,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
you
Why does it
know,
need to be complicated and why does it need to be about anybody taking from another? It's, yeah. And
yeah,
that's where I say I think it can be simpler. I know, on the other side of this, I'm also a mom, right? So it's what did my kids, my biological children, call their
yeah,
stepmom? And I
yeah,
remember standing in the elementary school parking lot and she was talking to me and telling me about some things going on. We always updated each other.
yeah,
And she started to refer to herself as mom in the context of telling me something that happened in a store and how she responded. And then she caught herself and stopped talking. And I said, whoa, whoa, stop right there. Say what you were going to say. And she did. And then I gave her a hug and I said to her, I want you to listen to me. I said, my girls have all my permission in the world to call you mom in your home, that's the role you fill, and that's not lost on me. And it's
right,
really, really important, and it means the world to me that they love you and feel comfortable enough and respect you enough to
yeah,
view you that way because that is the role you fill. And I will never forget, more important than giving her the permission was the calm that it instilled in me, and it took
mm,
away every ounce of conflict and fear and worry and is she replacing like, it all just dissipated in that moment, and it's something to this day that when they refer to her as mom, I completely embrace it. I told the girls in front of her they have my permission to call her that or anything that they feel comfortable calling her, and it
right,
was so freeing that it was actually eye-opening. I didn't even do it for those reasons. I didn't even realize
right,
the impact it would have on me or her or the girls. Um, so it can be powerful.
yeah.
So,
That's amazing. That's incredible. And I think
yes.
like, giving credit to people like you, because I think it is so hard. Like as much as we talk about, it's about the kids and, let the kids do it. Like it is hard.
Right.
Those are your children. And so um
Well, and we all have egos, right?
that's what I was just gonna say,
I mean,
taking so much of the step family thing is removing your ego from all these situations. And the fact that you could do that and allow your daughters just the permission and not make it complicated. I think, that's a really special gift because it is such a step family life is complicated for everybody, even the kids, right?
yeah. Well, and looking back on it, right? Like reflecting on it now, it was like, gosh, what made me do that? And in the moment, I don't really know. It was just what felt right. And I will say, right, we did have a good relationship. We got along, we co-parented well, we communicated, we did things together. And that, okay, let's be honest, that does make it easier. But I will tell you, when the hard times came, and they do for everyone, I mean, everyone's
Yeah.
had some challenge or another.
Yeah.
It's that I went back to remind myself that no matter what, no matter how much we disagreed or how much conflict there could be in a moment, there was a reason that I allowed that, and I needed to remember those good reasons, and that
Right.
also helped lighten the stress in the hard times. So, yeah, I don't think there's a
Yeah.
perfect answer, and I think that's the thing, right? Is it's and a lot of people, criticized us and didn't agree with us giving young children the choice. Our kids were 2, 5, 6, and 8. at the time that we
Yeah.
gave them the choice of what they're going to call. Like, and people say, how can a 2-year-old decide they're going to follow what their siblings do? Of course they are. But
Well, and that's just it too, though. Like, are you gonna I don't know, it's such a slippery slope, right? Because if your 2-year-old's walking around and hears everybody else calling your husband dad, you know, I mean,
right.
that
And that's what was happening, right? Is like
right.
we had 2 kids calling me mom and 2 kids calling him dad. So then the other 2 were picking up those habits. And that's normal. They're kids. They emulate what they see and hear all the
Right.
time.
And a 2-year-old doesn't say it out of, I don't love my, biological dad, or I want to betray my biological dad. Like,
No.
they're doing it, and also what a gift it is that if children do feel that comfort that, like, oh, I do want to call this person mom or dad, right? And really, as parents, isn't that what we want, is for our kids to feel confident and comfortable and loved, and like that is what we want. And
Mhm.
especially in this situation where they are going back and forth. I mean, you want that. You want to know that they're safe and right?
That's right. Well, and let's face it, especially for stepmoms, right? I am a stepmom, so I knew how much my girl's stepmom was pouring into my girls, right? Like, who do
Yeah.
you think was tucking them into bed most of the times and doing the bedtime routine with them? Who do you think was bathing them
Yeah.
and doing their hair and
Right.
taking them shopping and like, of
Planning
course.
all the things,
Who
doing all the things that moms
right.
do.
Who's
Right.
there when they start their
Exactly.
menstrual cycles and like all those
All the
things that
things.
and she deserves, even on the days that we disagree, even on the days that we're not seeing eye to eye, I still say she deserves that respect and that
Right.
appreciation and gratitude. Because let's face it, as step parents, we don't have to step up and step into those roles. We don't have to do all of those things. And the fact that people do choose to do it, to me, that alone, they deserve some level of gratitude and appreciation and respect for it.
Oh, yeah, I mean, for sure they do, of course. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
oh,
I think the other interesting part of this conversation is something you and I spoke about like 4 years ago, when I think I came to you. I don't even remember why it got brought up, but I brought up to you that I had been very bothered that my husband's ex has kept his last name,
mhm.
given so many years, and I was really wound up about it. And you brought a different perspective to the situation, which was, what if she just wants to keep that last name for simplicity reasons? Her daughter is young, she wants to have that same last name, you know, because
Yeah,
why wouldn't you want to have that same last name, right?
right.
Uh,
Well, and let's face it, it does simplify things when you're talking about the kids in school and their extracurricular activities and all the other things. I mean, people by default are biased to connect names, right? So when you're filling
yeah,
out a form and you fill out your name and you fill out your child's name, if you have the same last name, you don't get questioned. You're clearly
right.
mom or you're
Yeah,
clearly dad. I mean, that's just most people's bias. That's how it works in
hmm,
the school systems and most
of
places,
course. Yeah.
extracurricular activities that you sign them up for. And so there is an element of the simplicity that it brings to all of those aspects of life. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and I think when you brought that to me, I had just shared my different perspective came from my personal experience. So I was not
Yes.
I was not married to my children's father. We were together a number of years and then separated, but we weren't ever officially married. But I did legally change my last name because it was something that was important to him. And we did have children together. And at the time, we did not plan on separating and we did plan on getting married. And so, fast
Right.
forward, things did not go as planned. We separated. And then I was getting married and I had to make the choice of what to do with my name. And so
Right.
here I had 2 children with that last name,
Hmm.
and then I'm marrying, and you have to decide, right? You have to do
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I no longer had my maiden name technically, so it
Yeah.
wasn't like I could just choose to keep that. I could have chosen to go back to it, but
Right. Yeah,
ultimately,
of
I
course.
I decided to hyphenate it, much against my husband's wishes.
So,
I'll just
so sorry.
yeah. Um, but the deal was my children were young. They were 2 and 5.
Right.
And at the time it meant something to them and they
Mhm.
cared. Now that they're older, they don't and they laugh that I say that they cared because they did. They just don't remember it and understand
Right.
it. And it did make things easier through school. Now that we're getting to the end of school and they're almost adults, the deal was that I would hyphenate it. I would hyphenate it, and then when my youngest is 18, I will go formally
I'll
change it. I will
drop it.
pay the money and I will formally
Yeah.
change it. I will
Drop
have
it.
one last name and simplify my life all over again
Yeah.
after tons and tons of paperwork. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think when I shared that perspective with you, you went, "Oh, wait, I hadn't
Oh,
thought about that." Now, it
it
doesn't
was
mean
a
that
total.
that's her why,
Well,
but
and really does it matter why? Like it when you shared that perspective with me though, it was a total light bulb moment that I had never thought of. I thought of it as, why does she need to be this last name on the internet still, like on social
right,
media? Like, why are we doing this? And I had my nose in a knot about it. And then you brought that to me, and it was like, oh, actually, sure, that makes sense. And maybe that is the reason, and maybe it's not. But,
right.
at the end of the day, really, at the end of the day, does it really matter?
Right, and I think that's the question we should ask ourselves with everything, right? Like, is it hurting me? Is it
Yeah, does
causing
it
harm to my
really matter?
children or stepchildren? Like,
Right. And I think when I look back at how much it used to bother me, what it really boiled down to was my insecurities, which I've, been very open about,
right,
that I struggled with. And I think that was just another thing that was constantly in my face because FYI, I used to do a little social media creeping from now and then because I like to just pour salt in the wound sometimes, and hurt my own feelings by, well, I need
yeah,
to go and see what she's doing. Right.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, I don't know.
yeah,
I look back now and I just think I often wasted time worrying about things that didn't matter, because it really doesn't matter the reason why her name is what it is, whether it's for her daughter, whether it's because she doesn't feel like doing all the paperwork to change it, whether it's because she wants to keep it. I don't know. Makes no
right.
difference, really, right? Like,
Well, and I think that's the thing, right? It's easy to let your ego get involved and the insecurities to
mhm,
creep up, but
right,
at the end of the day, if you do the work on yourself and you become secure in who you are and your relationship and your marriage and your relationships with your children, her why doesn't actually matter because it doesn't affect you. And quite frankly,
exactly.
this is the unpopular opinion, but it's none of your business. Her why
It
is none of
is.
your business.
That's
And
right. It is none of
it's
my business. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. Yeah.
it's hard to hear that, right? It's hard for any of us to hear that. It's not what we want to hear when we're complaining to a friend and venting and so frustrated and angry. But at the end of the day, what people do and their decisions or what they say about you is none of your business.
That's
And if we
right.
can put that in perspective and go purely off of facts, then it removes so much of the drama and the chaos. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's just, yeah, good on you. Good on you to get there. It's not easy, but
It's not easy, and it's been a long road, I will say, but, it's so worth it, you know?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
um,
yeah, so we probably I mean, step families and blended families probably don't have those cute little name signs that, say such and such family and all of that because it doesn't work, right? I mean, we've got the Wilsons and the Bartons and,
yeah, you got
whatever.
all
Yeah,
the
you've got
names.
the same thing, right? It's just it is what
Well,
it is.
and talking about names, I'll just touch on this briefly, like, my daughter has a legal last name, but goes by
Mm,
my married last name, which is
mhm,
Lane, to your point, because it's nicer to feel like a family, right?
right,
Now we all have the same last name. Again, it's legally it's different. Um,
right.
and we don't need to go into all of the reasons of that, but just to your point that it does simplify everything and it makes the family feel more like a family. And
Well, kids are humans too, right? We can't forget that. And one of the basic needs of humans is to feel included and to feel a part of something. And where do you
yeah,
want to feel more included than your own
than your own
family?
family. Yeah, in your home. So
Right.
yeah, I will say, yeah, we are lucky enough to have the name sign. Um,
Yeah, and that's
that
awesome that you found a way to do it that everybody feels included.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, our situation is well, it's not so unique that nobody else has it, but unique in the sense that, you know, a lot of step families don't operate like ours. I
right,
don't have any ex to deal with, or a step parent on my daughter's, in my daughter's life,
right.
which I guess is fortunate and unfortunate at the same time. Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. There's no right or wrong. It's just what works for your family based on your circumstances.
Yeah, I think we're learning that through all these conversations. Well, not learning, but we're bringing to light that, yeah, there's not a one size fits all to these things, but they're definitely bigger conversations to be had and perspectives to be looked at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have challenges with what's in a name, um, there I'd say there's no right or wrong. I'd say talk it through with the people in your life and think about what really matters most, especially for the kids. And that's probably the best advice that you can go off of. So,
Yeah, I
and have
agree.
fun with it. I mean, like we said, nicknames can be fun.
Nicknames are fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes I wish I had a nickname, instead of, mom, mom, mom.
Mom.
They wear that
Yeah,
out
I
so
know,
fast.
right? Well,
So,
lately it's bra. And,
oh, yeah, I
that
get those
is
too.
literally what I am being called now.
Yeah. It's like the
Like,
shirts, the sayings that are going around, you go from mommy
mommy.
to mom to bruh.
Mhm. Yeah, and but it's literally happening in my house, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, this is just supposed to be like a funny shirt or a sticker. This isn't actually supposed to be happening." But
That's so funny.
it sure is.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, if you have
Okay.
questions or things that you would love to ask us about or hear us chat about, reach out. You can reach us on our website, theartofblendedchaos.com, or you can connect with us on Instagram at theartofblendedchaos. And until then, we'll chat with you next week.
A quick disclaimer to cover our asses. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on today's episode are the speaker's own, so if you didn't like them, why didn't you turn us off sooner?
The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. If you need support with a specific topic, you can do so by booking a one-on-one coaching call through our website, theartofblendedchaos.com. This podcast is not intended to replace professional, legal, or medical advice. You seriously didn't think we were lawyers or doctors, did you?